You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the NFL with AJL, episode 80. We are live on a Wednesday. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with us on the show. Appreciate everybody taking the time out of your day to get here with us live tonight. Hope y'all had a good election day. Not talking any politics on the show, but hope it was civil enough for everybody. It was a big day for the country, and hopefully everybody went out and did their civic duty, as we all say. Of course, before we get into the show tonight, y'all please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube as well. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. You already know what the QR code does there in the corner of the screen. It is every bit of social media and podcast content at the NFL with AJL. If you can't find me, you're simply not looking hard enough. Y'all please make sure again to go subscribe on the YouTube channel. We're just above 980 subs. Been sitting there stable for a little bit. Y'all are continuing to soak up the content, of course, so just please continue that trend on for us. You know, we got the Double A on tap tonight, so I'm bringing in my brother Alan Spradlin on the show. What's good, man? Good to have you in.
What's up, guys? Not a whole lot, brother. Just got some good games here, and I can't wait to break down the bracket, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, the bracket is going to be insane. As Alan told you right there, we are going to be breaking down the very first 12-team college football playoff bracket that they did put out on the first selection show for the CFP. Penn State still can't beat Ohio State. Georgia has an ugly win versus Florida, and more coming here on the show. So let's go ahead and jump into it and not waste any more time, man. We'll take that Penn State game off the top. Like I said, dude, they still can't beat Ohio State. They fall 20-13. Ohio State does get the big win. James Franklin crumbles. Ryan Day rises to the top in this one. Give me your takeaways on another classic that we saw in the Big Ten, man.
Well, man, like you said it really well. Penn State cannot seem to win the big game. I think they're a very overrated team. It shows in that game specifically. It was kind of like a defensive battle for the most part.
Right.
Like I said, they're squeaking by unranked opponents week in and week out. I mean, they struggled all game, really. They were held to. They had 10 points in the first quarter, and that was about the highlight for them. A field goal in the third.
Yep, the
Nothing
pick six
else.
was the highlight of their game for them.
All crickets rest of the game.
Yep.
And typical Penn State fashion, just can't win the big one. It's like, not that Ohio State stomped them out of the water or anything like that.
Right.
Like I said, their defense showed up, but Ohio State, they held their ground, did about what I expected them to do. Will Howard had a pretty decent game.
Right.
I still see them potentially making a case to play for the Big Ten championship, talking about the Buckeyes. But they still got to get through Indy. They still got to get through the Wolverines. 4 conference games left, I think. It's anybody's grab, really. But that's about all I got to say with it. I mean, they got another notch in their belt, so to speak, that Ohio State did, but there's more tests coming for them.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. All eyes on that Indiana-Ohio State game as it is going to be coming up, shortly before we know it. Yeah, this was a tough one for Penn State, man. It was an absolute snooze fest after they get that pick six on Will Howard, which is on Will Howard's first pass of the game. And this was kind of a revenge game for Will Howard. I don't know if you guys heard coming into it. Will Howard grew up in Pennsylvania. So, obviously he's a native to there. He waited on a scholarship offer from Penn State and never received one. So walking in, the guy's already got a chip on his shoulder. And what worse way really to display that chip than to throw a pick six literally on your first pass of the game for Ohio State. Immense pressure. Penn State's up 10-0. The crowd is all in the game. A sellout crowd for the Nittany Lions at their home stadium. It was just absolutely nuts. I mean, the place was rocking. We had another college football instant classic that is within the 2024 season, and we just got to gobble it up, or as much as we could have again, with Penn State putting on, the snooze fest. The fumble touchback on Will Howard's run that took 7 points off the board. I thought that was a big point in the game. Ohio State really leaving 21 points on the board in this game. So they could have easily won this one going away by 35, 40 plus in this one, but obviously they didn't. and the final score is what it was. Even though you did have Will Howard missing some simple wide open throws, he missed a touchdown pass as well. You had Jeremiah Smith drop a touchdown pass in the fourth quarter in this game. So there was just a lot of opportunities left on the field for definitely both of them. But when you look at Ohio State, I guess it feels a little better to know that they drew some of these plays up and they just really weren't able to execute them. Possibly the play of the game, man. The interception in the end zone by Ohio State. It looks like Drew Aller gets his touchdown pass, the only what would have been, Penn State touchdown of the game. It looked like a touchdown. Then they say incomplete. Then after the review, it was an interception. So just really solid refereeing here. And when you go back and look, I'm like, talk about a classic moment from a classic game. And then again, Penn State absolutely falling asleep. It was a snooze fest for this team. And this was against a makeshift offensive line of Ohio State as well, man. It's sad when you're leading rusher.
Say the least.
Literally. I mean, nobody expected Ohio State to have as much of an offensive push in the trenches as they did. And I think I can say that Ohio State fairly won on both sides of the ball in the trenches in this game.
Sure.
The Penn State offense was bad. Their leading rusher was a quarterback, not the mobile one in Bo Pribula, Drew Aller with the knee brace on, and a tight end. And your leading receiver was your running back with a little over 50 yards. I thought both of the teams ran the ball well and kind of creatively in some aspects. But again, the patchwork O-line of Ohio State really was a big thing in this one. And for them to be able to run the ball as well as they did, just an absolute testament. And I had Ohio State coming into this game, better program. Like you said, Penn State's overrated. They've been squeaking by some people. Now, we've seen Ohio State squeaking by as well, but I just didn't expect Penn State to come out with the victory in this one. The fourth quarter goal line stand from Ohio State was just sensational Ryan Day defense, that true brand of football. Penn State had no choice but to pass it on fourth down, and that was really stupid to have 3 straight run plays from the new offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki. It was just very ugly to see. And even a better management of Ohio State with the trenches and later in this game. Quinshaw Judkins' final drive of the game, 32 yards rushing. Ohio State starts from the 1-yard line with 5 minutes to go. Penn State has 3 timeouts. They never touch the ball again.
Correct.
They never touch the ball again. And with Ohio State leaving 21 points on the board, Penn State not being able to capitalize on it at home, you're up 10-0. You're on the 3-yard line twice with 2 possessions, and both of those end in a turnover on down. So Penn State just left everything on the field. It was honestly quite embarrassing. 6 of Penn State's 8 offensive drives ended in either a punt or a turnover. Both of those possessions, again, like I said, on the third down line, or the 3-yard line ended in a turnover on downs as well. The Penn State wide receivers were not good in this game, man. Again, I'm taking a big look at the OC for Penn State. Their wide receiver had 3 catches for 49 yards. Again, you're leading their wide receivers, every wide receiver on the team, Alan, not just one wide receiver, 3 catches for 49 yards. Every Penn State wide receiver combined in this game, 3 catches, 49 yards. You cannot win a football game of any magnitude playing like that. So numbers fall out for Penn State. They're 1-23 versus top 5 teams since 2000. They have 7 blown double-digit leads under James Franklin, the current head coach. 3 of those to Ohio State. James Franklin himself, a measly 1-9 versus this Ohio State team. But it's kind of like the Georgia and the Kirby Smart effect with Alabama. James Franklin against Michigan and Ohio State, a combined 4-16 record against those schools coming into 2024. Penn State is 0-7 against Ohio State and Michigan since 2021. They're 35-5 against all other opponents. So it really feels like the Georgia Kirby Smart, playing against Alabama type of thing. But kind of give me some of your thoughts on there, man. I mean, 1-23 versus top 5 teams, 1-9 versus Ohio State. It's ugly for this team when it comes to the big game.
You mentioned Kirby Smart. Their offense is looking a lot like UGA's right now. Not very productive, especially in the first half. Rather in this game, it was kind of flip-flopped. They were doing all right in the first half, sucked in the back half. If I'm James Franklin, I'm going to my receivers coach right away. Like, we've got to get the ball rolling. I mean, no pun intended.
You have to.
We've got to get the slot receiver, up to speed. We got to. I mean, do they not know the playbook? Like, what's going on?
Right.
Is it a skill
Bad
issue?
play calling.
Bad play calling. What's the as for not being able to beat ranked opponents? It might have some sort of it might be some sort of head game with James, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like you said with Alabama and Kirby Smart having that, ever since that national championship in 17, they've been on his brain,
Yep.
you know. But another takeaway I have, they're now number 6. They're still not out of it. They still have some hopes. But they're number 4 in the Big Ten. They don't have a chance at really sniffing the Big Ten championship, in my opinion, unless everything just goes off the rails in the Big Ten in the next few weeks, which is highly
Which it could.
possible. Knowing this season, the parity has
Right.
been real. But yeah,
Right.
I mean, I still think they're a bit overrated because, like you said, there's no offensive production there whatsoever. I mean, and as for Ohio State, they need to tighten up the offensive line if they want to get through somebody like Oregon again in the Big
Right.
Ten championship, or someone like Indiana, because they're not going to roll over for you. You saw how
Mm-hmm.
bad they beat Nebraska and how close the Nebraska Ohio State game was.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you got to get a clue and better do it quick.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it, man. Penn State falls to Ohio State 20-13. A little bit of a snooze fest again after Penn State comes out, big pick six. And I was like, wow, huge pressure on Ohio State. Like they got to play and they got to play now. You're in
Yeah.
arguably, not even arguably, you're in one of the hardest college football environments to play in. Over 110,000 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Biggest crowd
Loud
ever
in
at
there.
Penn State's home stadium. It was a whiteout. You probably couldn't breathe in there even if you wanted to. So I could only imagine the pressure of the crowd once Will Howard threw that pick six. Y'all get in the chat, get in the comments. Let us know what y'all think of the Big Ten showdown between Penn State and Ohio State. We still got these great college football games going through the 2024 season. And let's move on to the next one that wasn't so great for my Georgia Bulldogs as they win an ugly SEC showdown in the neutral site in Jacksonville versus Florida, 34-20. Dogs don't score their first touchdown of the game until the third quarter. Allen, be easy on me, man, because I know it wasn't a good one for Georgia. Let me know your thoughts on this one.
I'm going to take it easy as I can. So where do I begin, really? What's this first half? Yet again, bad performance in the first half. Florida's defense was stepping up. They didn't look like a 4-4 team.
Nope.
Right in the first half. I was like,
Nope.
hold up, who is this?
Right.
Carson Beck, once again, throwing picks left and right, 3 interceptions,
Bad.
I think 9 throughout 3 games.
Yeah.
If you're Kirby Smart, you got to start scratching your head,
8 in his last 3.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're
Thanks
good.
for the
Still just as bad. One more, one less. Don't make it feel any better.
Right. Their offense is concerning me right now.
Oh, yeah.
At what point, kind of like with the Marcel Reed situation, at what point is it next game when Carson throws a pick in the first half? Do you throw in Gunnar Stockton? Is it time?
Right.
Because that's what many Georgia fans that I see are begging for. I mean, and then Mike Bobo's offense, we're not seeing the Georgia of old, obviously.
Bobo doing Bobo damn things, dude.
It's not the old SEC anymore, Mike.
Nah.
I thought, I know it's a rivalry game. I know it's a SEC matchup. I know all this. But with all that in consideration, Florida's not as good as Georgia, and we know this.
Right.
But they in that first quarter, or first half, they were playing like it. 13 in the second quarter, 3-3 for Georgia. It's field goals. It's just like that Penn State second half. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And look, I thought UGA to be immensely superior to Florida in every way. They still found a way to get it done. But and they scorched earth in the second half. I mean, the Dogs did what they do, but they have to improve in quarterback play and just offense in general if they want another championship. Because after the Bama loss, seriously, man, teams know that they are beatable now. It just like in that, just like with Bama, they lag behind in the first half and can't catch up. What happens?
Yep.
If that happens again today, or they turned it around then in the Florida game. But what happens again if they're caught in this situation?
Yep.
That's my concern. But I'm gonna let you take the floor.
No, you should be concerned 100%. I mean, when you talk about Carson Beck's turnovers, when you talk about Mike Bobo teaming up with Carson Beck, it feels like, to just offensively sabotage this game, and not literally. Of course, I'm just being dramatic, but this was an
Right.
ugly one for Georgia. This is one where, I got to start. I understand the magnitude of this college football season. I understand how it's a very big season, and for some reason, I still think when Georgia goes to play some of these what feels like very inferior teams that I don't have to watch. And of course, I watch the game as it starts off, and I'm like, oh. I could tell just a few drives in. I was like, it's gonna be one of those games. You know what I mean? I was instantly glued. I was like, damn it! Now I have to watch this thing snap to snap. From the first to the fourth, from 15 minutes in the first quarter all the way to no minutes in the fourth. Like every single bit of this game, I had to absorb it, man. And I hated to feel like I had to babysit my dogs against Florida. But this is a rivalry game. This is one of the oldest rivalries in college football. It is a 12-team playoff. It is the SEC. It is the greatest college football season we've ever seen. So everybody's playing hard because a lot of people still have a lot of things at stake. And I'm not saying Florida is going to be a team to sneak in on us or anything, but damn it, they nearly did in this one. And Georgia had won 6 of the last 7 matchups in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And they had won 3 in a row by 21 plus. Brian, I see your comment here. Georgia's defense is on fire. Defense wins championships. Dog offense, not that good, but not bad. I think they get back to a run game and make it easier on Carson Beck. Do you think they improve to win the SEC? Of course, I think that they can improve to win the SEC. As a fan, I hope that they improve to win the SEC because Carson Beck will be the reason why Georgia does not go as far as they want to this year.
Agreed.
And I'm going to just say it now. Carson Beck won't be playing on Sundays, y'all. Carson Beck will not be playing on Sundays in the National Football League. That type of Zach Wilson, Derek Carr, Daniel Jones type decision-making does not get you drafted into the league. And if it does, you're a perennial backup. You might be undrafted. You're going to workouts. I'm not sitting here intentionally trying to drag Carson Beck, but his decision-making is inexcusable. He's thrown 11 picks in 8 games this year. He threw 11 in all 14 games he played in last year. Regular season, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. This year, 15 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And the bad part is when Carson Beck throws a pick, he doesn't just throw one. He doesn't have just a 1 interception game. He throws multiple. All 11 of those interceptions in the last 5 games are all 11 picks that he has in the year. Let me get back to Brian's comment a little bit here. The Dogs' offense is not that good, but not bad. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's bad. It is better than most, but when you have Carson Beck trying to run the helm and Mike Bobo trying to convince you that he's right, and you're not putting the ball in Trevor Etienne's belly, the game plan with Georgia is very simple. You don't have Carson Beck throw a lot, even though the kid's got a cannon and he can throw the ball well, but his decision making and his
goes into coverage.
Exactly. His inaccuracy, not very good. He feels like he's got to save the day sometimes. So I do think Georgia can improve to win the SEC. They do have to get back to that run game because that's going to be the only reason why they'll be able to win. I love what Georgia's defense is doing as well. Georgia's defense can stop anybody in college football any day. Agreed. They're going to bend, but they're not going to break. And we saw that in this game. And I'm very proud of Georgia for the way that they won this game. These tough games, I give a lot of teams, a lot of other teams, and you've heard me, we've bantered back and forth for the many years of our familyhood. I give a lot of other teams shit when they win close games. But in reality, how you're able to deal with adversity in the regular season just prepares you for the postseason.
Correct.
How you're able to deal with adversity in these types of games defines who you are as a football team, because we are sitting here dragging Georgia's face across concrete if they lose this game.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
We're not, which is a thankful, something that I'm very thankful for here. But a little bit of the takedown, the takeaways and the breakdowns from the game. I thought Georgia moved the ball decently on the first couple of drives. They had no dice in the red zone, so they had to, of course, settle for a field goal off of Carson Beck's first interception. Florida wasted no time, throws a 40-yard bomb to score. Right. For everybody saying that DJ Lagway's injury was the reason why Georgia won, shut the hell up and tell me that you don't watch football without telling me that you don't watch football. DJ Lagway was 2 for 6 with a little over 40 yards in a touchdown. Newsflash, the 40 yards came on 1 pass. So let's say DJ Lagway was, 1 for 5 before that? For 2 yards, 6 yards, no touchdowns. But okay, Florida, okay, Georgia haters, keep telling yourself that DJ Lagway was the reason why Georgia escaped from this game. Like I said, we talked about Carson Beck's interceptions. I just can't fathom this guy's decision-making in all games, big or small. 10 touchdowns and 11 picks in his last 5 games. 8 picks in his last 3. Back-to-back games with 3 picks. We already talked about the interceptions this year versus last year. Georgia's defense, I thought there for a second, was getting a little schooled on the option by Florida's offense after Carson Beck threw his second interception. I was like, don't let these guys come in here and do this, man. Want to send some prayers up for DJ Lagway as well. You have the Yale transfer, Aiden Warner, the walk-on formerly third stringer, comes in. I will give a thank you to the SEC refs for probably the first time this year for getting the non-targeting call correct. That was initially called targeting. It was just a perfect textbook hit to blow up the play. If you guys watch the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It kind of seemed like that was the spark that Georgia needed. You got Florida to punt out of their own end zone. You take over in Florida territory. Just for Carson Beck to throw almost his third, and eventually down the line, it was his third pick of the game. When he's trying to play hero ball on the sack, the Florida defender dropped it on what could have been his third pick. So Carson Beck very well should have had 4 or 5 interceptions in this game. Georgia ends up settling for a 50-yarder right there. But again, Georgia's best drive of the day, which ended in a touchdown, established the run, and scored on a run. I don't understand why this is so hard for Mike Bobo to understand. I know he hears the noise. I know Kirby hears it. They both see it. Your quarterback's decision-making will be the reason you do not win the national championship this year. It will be the reason you possibly don't host the SEC championship, play in the SEC championship, whatever the case is. I still think Georgia is comfortably and still firmly in the 12-team playoff and has that chance as good as anyone to make it to the national championship, because everyone is, still kind of flawed in college football, and that's the beauty of this sport. But again, Carson Beck's decision-making is just absolutely undeniable. Thankfully, Georgia finds life again in the third quarter. They outscore Florida 14-0. Why are we passing the ball on 3rd and 2? Oh, because Mike Bobo is the OC. I just don't get that. It's really simple.
Feed Trevor the ball.
Literally, put the ball in Trevor's belly. Just like when they say when you go to the Falcons game, give the ball to Tyler. Talking about Tyler Algier. Give the ball to Trevor. Yeah, I thought at one point these teams were really competing to just see who can put together the worst offensive drive of the day. Florida had 7 of their first 11 drives go 3 and out with just 9 first downs. It was really petulant quarterback play from Aiden Warren as well. Beck did have a big-time throw on 3rd and 7 in this one. Clean pocket, delivered it well. The Dogs were 2 of 9 on 3rd down up until then, which got them 3-10. Still very bad on the day. But I will say, after Carson Beck threw his 3rd interception, he only had 2 incompletions on the night, 12 for 14, 142 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I guess he did show us a little bit that, hey, I can rebound from some of these bad mistakes. More times than not, he doesn't. And I don't want to continue to have to watch my quarterback dig himself out of multiple interception games, dig himself out of multiple bad decisions, because Georgia's better than that. Carson Beck, unfortunately, is the weak link on this football team right now. And I hate to say that, because quarterback is not a position that you want to admit that to.
No.
But, Georgia played as well as they could. They definitely battled back and forth with Florida. I believe firmly that Carson Beck's decision-making was the only real reason that Florida was actually in this football game, because Georgia still comes out and puts up 34. Yep. They have an ugly interception from Aiden Warren, which clearly, if you watch the play, he kind of could have had a crossing route. Georgia's defense was kind of busted at that moment. So, there's definitely some room for improvement here. But the glaring thing, without a question, is the fact that Carson Beck's decision-making is horrible, mid, and it will hold Georgia back from where they want to go. Catching y'all from Puerto Rico, by the way. That's what's up, Brian. Hope you're staying safe out there, man. I have seen the updates on Facebook and also from Nikki commenting back and forth on your posts as well. Texas A&M absolutely embarrassed by South Carolina, 44-20. This comes 1 week after I said Texas A&M could possibly win the SEC after going 5-0 in the conference. What the hell, Adam? And then they come out and do this. Give me some of your takeaways from this embarrassment of Texas A&M, and I guess a legacy game from Lenora Sellers, for crying out loud.
Yeah, no kidding. 244 yards, 2 touchdowns from that guy.
Yeah, bro had over 100 yards on 15 carries. Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Overall, I'm very disappointed in the Aggies. Very. I mean, perhaps we gave them too much gas last week. I think that's what happened, because
no wonder nobody watched the video when I said Texas A&M could win the SEC. They knew I was lying. They knew they were going to go out and do that.
Yeah. Texas A&M going to A&M.
Yep.
Look, man, we all know in the SEC that South Carolina is a trap game.
Yeah.
We
they
know
play
it.
hard, brother.
They do play hard.
They play
They
hard.
might not win the SEC or even go to the championship. They're gonna give you a run for your money.
They'll
Georgia
spoil it
learned
for
that a few
somebody.
years back. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I always
They're not
respect
gonna
the
lay
Tar
down
Heel
for you
play.
for real.
Nope.
I mean, for Christ's sake, they snuck up on Bama a
Yep.
few weeks back.
Should have beat
They
Bama.
they stomped Oklahoma into the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were just better in every phase of this game.
They were.
They lagged behind a little bit in the second quarter, but that second half they unleashed total hell on Texas A&M. It wasn't even close.
Yep.
And I was excited to see Marcel Reed playing and starting. I mean, he had a pretty decent game, minus the interception. He went 18 for 28. That's not too bad. 206 yards, 1 touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
But look, Texas A&M still has some hopes, but they need a lot, and I mean a lot, to fall into place. Um, they have to win out, number one. And they better hope Texas loses another game.
For sure.
So either A.
About to say Texas A&M's got to play Auburn and Texas finish out the year.
Right. And Auburn's not going to roll over. I mean, they're not going to win, but they're not going to roll over.
Right.
Especially if you're playing in their house.
Mm-hmm.
They're either A, they got exposed this weekend.
Yep.
And now everybody knows how to beat them.
Right.
Or B, they
got
had
tape
a
on
really bad game.
Yep.
And I think just like Notre Dame, the Gamecocks had their number coming in. And I think Texas A&M came in there like, oh, we're going to beat them. We're going to do what we did to LSU.
Right.
Nope. Not a chance.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you have the floor.
No worries, man. Good takeaways there for sure. Yeah, this was one that I knew was going to be sneaky for sure. I ended up having to turn this one back on because I was like, wow, it's actually, shaping out to be a good one. But I saw it was, they go up 14-0 quick. They come back and tie it 14 all. Texas A&M does. It's 20-20 at the half. And then Scar just takes off, man. They just absolutely take off. Lenoris Sellers. 2 words to describe South Carolina in this game. 13 of 27, so not great. 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, though, along of 57. No sacks, 148.5 passer rating, 86.4 QBR. But the big stat line, 15 carries, 106 yards, 1 touchdown, and a long of 23. Lenoris Sellers just absolutely snapped in this game. I mean, Lenoris Sellers went Marcel Reed on Marcel Reed from week 8.
Pretty
and
much.
Marcel Reed had tape. People had tape on Marcel Reed. And it's always nice when you see a new player come out and you're like, oh, wow, this guy is like the newest thing since sliced bread. We've never seen this before. We kind of saw the similar thing, say again.
What a spectacle.
Literally. And, we kind of see some things like this with Lamar Jackson in the NFL. Teams catch up to him a little bit, but then he adjusts, continues to be great, obviously wins another MVP. Right. So we know the type of player that Lamar is. And no, I'm not comparing Marcel Reed to Lamar, but when you're an electric player, when you're something different that people haven't seen before, and then they get tape on you, it's different. And I think that's exactly, what happened in this game. The penalties for Texas A&M are just god-awful. Against South Carolina, 7 penalties, 68, excuse me. I was like, no, they don't feel right. 7 penalties, 68 yards, just really, really changed the trajectory for South Carolina in this game. The Aggies were up 20-17. They were up 20-17 in the first half, and then just after multiple flags, it put South Carolina in really good field position as well. I thought Colin Klein's play calling was a little questionable after Le'Veon Moss went out with the injury, which was a big loss here for Texas A&M. I know after we got off the show last week, you were talking about how, you were upset. Well, not upset, but you're like, damn, I didn't mention, Le'Veon Moss. While the list of lazy play calls is long, offensive coordinator Colin Klein's lack of imagination to counter the Gamecocks' elite defensive ends and linebackers from crashing down and stopping any running play, that really puts it straightforward and really into perspective for you. Usually they were going right up the middle, but then the Aggie offense just completely shutting down in the second half after driving the field for 4 scores in the first half. It was just rough. And I understand when you lose a star player like Le'Veon Moss, your ball club is already stomaching, for lack of better words, the fact that Connor Weigman's not playing. And you do have a new guy in Marcel Reed. There was some tone setters in this game as well. I really thought I thought that Texas A&M's tackling could have been definitely better in this one. It is fixable for sure. I thought Mike Elko didn't necessarily come out and assert himself as well as he could up front, because you see, South Carolina comes out 4th and 1 on the first drive, boom, they convert it, and like the crowd is just absolutely in it. Texas A&M's first drive, 4th and 1, they're stood up. So South Carolina is going absolutely berserk at that point in this game, and this is just a big time sneaky upset game, because as soon as Texas A&M is 5-0 in the conference, they're in sole control of the SEC. They drop one, Georgia doesn't. Now they're both tied at 5-1. So, if it started today, technically, I think they would be playing in the SEC title game. But South Carolina just absolutely ran all over Texas A&M as well. 286 rushing yards. I see why they call Raheem Sanders Rocket Sanders, because the dude absolutely snapped. 20 carries, 144 yards. Want to make sure 2 touchdowns. Obviously, Lenore Sellers snapped as well with the 15 carries, 106 and 2 touchdowns as well. It's going to be hard for you. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's going to be very hard for you. Excuse me. Sellers only had 1 rushing touchdown, 2 passing, and then Rocket Sanders had 2 rushing touchdowns as well. 7.2 yards per carry for Rocket Sanders. But you just can't beat a team when you play like this. I mean, when you're giving up 7.6 yards per play, 530 total yards of offense, you've got 7 penalties for 68 yards. You lose the turnover battle. You actually edge them out in time of possession by just a little bit, but just an overall, very, very ugly game for Texas A&M. And I feel like one thing that they saw is when they came out, they were immediately put into their largest deficit of the year. I mean, immediately off the rip, down by 14-0. That wasn't a position that Texas A&M had ever been in before. So now that we've seen Texas A&M blow an SEC lead, are you confident that they can kind of rebound from this? We know that they're the second team out right now in the 12-team playoff. Am I correct on that? Yes, they are. Yeah. SMU is the first team out. What are your thoughts around that? I mean, how do you feel about Texas A&M now, knowing that they just put up a stinker like this on the road?
Well, I don't think they anticipated to go down 14-0 or 14-3 in the first quarter at all. Right. And they hadn't, like you said, been tested this way really all season, other than the LSU game and then Notre Dame. But that was a dogfight in itself for most of the game.
Right.
But look, man, Texas A&M, they got to sharpen up. They can rebound from this. Like I said, South Carolina is always a trap game. They get wild down there in Columbia. They're crazy for those Gamecocks. Yep. I think it's still a possibility that Texas A&M can go play Georgia in the SEC championship in Atlanta, but right now I don't think it's plausible, because they need a lot to happen. They got to win out. They got to beat Texas for sure, because they play them at the end of the season. And I mean, they got to play Georgia, even with a bad offensive line, man.
Oh yeah, they're gonna have to go through the dogs if
they want to get to the 12 team. They have to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They will have to go through Georgia, because if they're already teetering as the second team out, I'm sorry, Auburn and Texas is the last 2 teams that Texas A&M probably wants to play.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they get Texas at home, but they get Auburn and Jordan-Hare.
Oh, and that's
like you
not
said,
good.
Auburn's not going to roll over, man. Not at all. And they've had a hell of a schedule this year. They smack LSU. They turn around and get smacked by South Carolina. They smack Missouri. Played a close one to Arkansas. Beat Florida by 13. Lost to Notre Dame in the opener of the year. That feels like so damn long ago. The season's flying by. I'm like, God, did we really already have 9 college football games in the books? But yeah, I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on that Texas A&M and Auburn game on November 23rd. And then we've also got currently number 5 Texas traveling to number 15 Texas A&M on November 30th. All right, guys, we've got a very interesting segment of the show for you, Brian. I'm going to get your comment real quick, and you might want to stick around for this segment, man, because I think you'll really enjoy it. Gamecocks are hard to beat at home. Winning on the road in the SEC is tough. Thank you.
Absolutely right.
Somebody doubles down and says it with me. Not that anyone's out there against it, but this is why I have sympathy. Yes, I'm a bit of a homer because I'm a Dogs fan, but this is why I had sympathy in the Kentucky game. This is why I had sympathy in the Florida game. Now, you still play rough in both of them. You play rougher in the Florida game with looking how Carson Beck played, but it's hard. Neutral site as well. You might as well be on the road. I know it's a neutral site game for both teams, but you're in Florida. Okay. The players for Florida have probably, even though Georgia was the home team, they've probably already mentally put themselves in the space of like, we're home. We're in our backyard. We are literally at the NFL team's stadium in Jacksonville. Not super far from the swamp, I guess. Anyways, it could feel like. But all right, guys, like I said, we have an awesome segment for you. If you guys did catch the very first ever CFP 12 team rankings, the first one to ever come out, for the selection committee, they put them out. We actually got the top 25 teams and then the top 14. 14 was second team out, which was Texas A&M. 13 was SMU, which was the the first team out, but they did go ahead and drop the 12 teams. If you guys didn't see it, we had for the CFP rankings from 1 to 12, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, BYU, Notre Dame, Alabama, Boise State. I really didn't have any problems with that ranking, man, and I try not to freak out too much. It's the first ranking of a new playoff system. The committee has a lot of pressure on them. Any glaring mistakes, or were you okay with this ranking as it came out?
Hold on. So I thought they had UGA at number 2 and
Georgia.
Oregon at number 1.
So Georgia is seated at number 2 because they are first
in
the SEC right now.
I'm looking at the bracket.
No, you're okay, and that's the interesting part. Georgia is ranked 3rd. I think they could have kind of maybe just done away with this, but I get what they're doing because they're showing us the bracket early. Once it gets later in the year, we're not going to really care about where they're seated.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, we're not really going to care about their ranking. It's just where are these guys seated in the playoffs. So yes, right. Georgia is ranked 3rd in the country, which I think is fair. I think Oregon, Ohio State,
right.
They have the claim
all of them
for that.
Very fair. Yeah.
Right. I thought Georgia maybe could have slipped up to number 2. I saw some people complaining that Miami should have been ahead of Georgia. I'll just say this. I don't know everyone else's strength of schedule, but I know looking at that TV last night, Georgia had the number 1 strength of schedule among everyone. Nobody was even close to 10 or 15th overall, if I remember correctly. Indiana obviously had the 132nd, so they're going to have some things going on there. But yes, excuse me. Georgia ranked 3rd, seeded 2nd. Go ahead. Sorry.
First of all, that Miami, Georgia thing, that was just ridiculous what you just said.
Miami been squeaking by inferior competition, bro.
We would have this same conversation right now. Like, seriously, if Florida was undefeated right now, they would be the best team in football because they have the hardest schedule.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Just going off the bracket alone, how they had it placed out. They obviously got Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio State, Boise State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, Bama, and then that's the first round. I've got Tennessee emerging victorious out of them in Indiana, excuse me. And I see them going to play Oregon. I see Ohio State probably beating Boise State. I'm just going to be real with you. Boise State, they're doing amazing things. Ashton Janesy's awesome, but I don't see them beating Ohio State at all.
Right. No level of competition that they've really played thus far.
Penn State's going to drop it to Notre Dame, dude. If they play like they did, no chance.
Yeah. So you got Notre Dame coming out victorious.
Yeah, they're going to play Miami. Ohio State's playing BYU.
Okay.
Texas beats Bama.
Easy. I think
easily. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I'd say easily.
Well, yeah, not necessarily easily, but
I think Texas is a better team. I'm picking up what you're putting
down. And then from there, obviously we got Oregon, Tennessee. I see Oregon coming out of that one.
Okay.
They've been playing lights out all season.
Yeah.
The only reason I picked Tennessee over Indy anyway is the strength of schedule. Who they've had
100%, bro. And I think with that one too, I think it'll be a close one between Indiana and Tennessee because you can't deny what Indiana's done, but Tennessee is in the SEC.
Yep.
As of now, they got that game at home, and that defense is real as hell, bro. I mean, that defense is the reason they are able to be in this 12 team.
And did they not beat Alabama?
They did. They did. I don't know why I keep forgetting that. You know, it's funny because like Alabama, I didn't even forget. It just slipped my mind. With Alabama not being that
Yeah,
prowess, it's like, yeah, it's a
it's
good win, but
weird.
like it's a
Yeah.
good win for Tennessee, but it's not as impressive as in past years, you know?
Right. It's no Saban. It's not the same.
Right.
Um, so that's the only reason I picked Tennessee over Indy.
Right.
But I do have them losing to Oregon. Oregon, like I said, playing lights out all year
Mm.
long.
Yeah. They
They
seem
they
like the
looked
team
a
to beat right
little
now.
rough at first at the beginning
Yeah.
of the season, but they got it
Right.
going. Dan
Right.
Lanning whipped them into gear real quick.
Yep.
BYU, Ohio State. I don't even have to really go into that. Ohio State's going to win. I mean, Big Ten's better than the Big 12, always has
Right.
been. So,
Right. Strength of schedule
um,
as well. Common opponents. I'm just like, Ohio State's been more tested.
yeah. And look, anything can happen, right? They could catch them with their pants down, so to speak. But
Yep.
I still see Ohio State moving on
Right.
to play Oregon. Then I have Miami and Notre Dame. I take Notre Dame. Miami has been getting closer and closer to losing football games.
I think Miami would play Texas, brother. That's how it looks
Would
like
they?
the yeah,
I thought it. I
because
thought it
if
goes. Thought it goes
go ahead.
7-10, then 6-11, and then
S-
3.
So
Yeah.
what I've heard is there will not be any reseeding once the bracket starts.
Right. Okay.
Like so, yeah. So from what they showed last night, the winner
Yeah,
of
you're right. You're
Alabama
right. You're
and
right.
Texas would go on and play Miami.
You're right. I got it backwards.
No, you're fine.
Um, Out of Miami and Texas, I'm picking Texas all day
Mm-hmm.
long. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that'd be a hell of a game too, man. Oh my
yeah,
goodness, we got
and
bangers
then
all the way around.
Notre Dame, UGA. I'm picking UGA, even with Carson Beck's subpar, excuse me, quarterback play.
Right,
Uh, I'm still picking the Dogs. I mean, they're back-to-back champions for a reason.
right.
Um, then from there, Oregon,
Georgia,
Ohio
Texas.
State,
Yep.
and Georgia, Texas, the best teams in college football, arguably.
Uh huh.
I think so.
Yep.
Um, Oregon beats Ohio State, very close, like last time. I think they get the revenge that they got, you know, dished by Washington last year, losing twice to the same team. I think that happens with Ohio State and Oregon. And then Texas, UGA. I think UGA emerges victorious a second time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see Oregon, UGA for the national championship. And just to note, this is just with these bracket ranking, like
Right.
structure.
This
Like
is from
it's
the
not
projection that we
not a
got.
final forecast or anything like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Although it could easily, it's feasible. Oregon,
Yeah.
UGA, that is very feasible.
Right.
But yeah, that's my bracket.
Yeah, that's perfect, man. I don't even know if I'll repeat myself after what you said because that's damn near how I have it shaken out as well. I'm sorry, I did miss the last part. I was looking at what's it called? I was looking at the bracket. So, do you have Oregon over Georgia?
Oh no, I think I got the Dogs winning that one.
Ah, don't blow my head up, bro. Don't do
Nah,
that.
but I think it's you're right. I didn't pick a winner, but yeah, I think
That's
UGA
okay.
emerges victorious. Very, very tight game. I think
Yeah.
defense is the key there. Whoever
Yeah.
plays the best defense, like dude said earlier, defense wins championships, and he is right.
Yep.
Whoever's better on the defensive side of the ball wins the game. And
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked to see the Ducks take their first, but I think the Dogs have it if this is how it plays out.
That would be beautiful, man. Georgia would secure their third natty in 4 years, and thus the dynasty would be officially intact. Brian's got a really good comment here that I'm kind of not disagreeing with, and you can weigh in on it with me as well. Brian says, I wouldn't be mad if they move the U, Miami, and Indiana, undefeated teams, ahead of all teams with a loss. Being 9-0 means something. Let it shake out, but undefeated teams in these Power 5 conferences should get love after 9 games. Last 2
agree.
weeks will sort it out. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I definitely agree with him because 9-0, like
I do
you
agree.
said,
Not 9-0 is impressive.
it's hard,
It is.
especially with the parity we've seen this season.
Yeah. If it was so easy, we'd have more undefeated teams,
Exactly.
And while I do think strength of schedule matters,
It does.
you could argue that Miami should have lost to Cal and Virginia Tech. But if, shoulda, coulda, woulda, they overcame adversity. They won.
If.
But I'm glad that the committee does factor in strength of schedule. Did you happen to watch this? No, you told me you were out and about, which is totally okay. Shout out Reese Davis and ESPN. They actually kind of grilled Ward Manuel, who is, I think, the first year as the chair of the CFP committee. He's been the AD of Michigan for quite a few years now. I can't remember the exact year. But you know what? One of my better favored, college football playoff selection committee members, and Reese Davis was just grilling him. Like Miami behind Georgia. What about BYU and Indiana being undefeated, and just talking about how they really split hairs, and what was the decision between Ohio State and Georgia. And I thought he stepped up decently well and answered the questions. They said that they're watching these games. They said that they're picking apart the schedules. They say that they're splitting hairs when they have to. They're saying that they're looking at, the common opponents and how they're actually winning and losing these football games. So I appreciate it. Again, there's not too much, griping I feel like we can do with the committee so far. Mm-hmm. Brian, I got to agree with you. I do think being 9-0 means something. Now, in the same breath, the strength of schedule does matter. But, I couldn't agree more. Let it shake out. But undefeated teams in these Power 5 conferences should get love after 9 games. They could, because when you have ACC play and Big 10 play and Big 12 play, or any of the other conferences out there, Mountain West play, winning in your conference is important, because that's the only way you're going to go on and win the conference championship, which is more than likely going to punch you a ticket. Right. Very hard to win. And which is more than likely going to punch you a ticket straight to the 12 team. Say again.
I said conference games are hard to win. Ask South Carolina.
Yeah, hell yeah, absolutely. But I don't know if I'll disagree with you on anything, man. I think I would take Ohio State over Boise State, just simply from the strength of schedule that both teams have played. I think Indiana and Tennessee would arguably be the best game of the weekend because of the Cinderella story with Indiana. I think Tennessee's defense, their strength of schedule that they've played, and just the fact that they're in the SEC, they would be hosting this one at home, would really take it away. That's another interesting thing. So only in the first round do you truly get your college football pageantry home field advantage, because after that are the
bowls,
the 4 bowl games, and then 2 bowl games, and then you have the national championship. I would have Texas over Alabama in a close one. Call me crazy. I wouldn't be shocked if Alabama won that one, because maybe it does kind of feel like over the last couple of weeks, Alabama has rebounded a little bit comparatively to what Texas has been just for the last couple of games we've seen out of the Longhorns. Of course, they're on the bye week this week, but the last 2 games for Texas were very ugly. But I don't know, man. Looking at it now, I'm going to take Texas. I just think they've been, kind of the better football team throughout the year.
Consistent.
And then I would take Notre Dame over Penn State as well, just for the sole fact of Penn State looked the way that they did. If James Franklin can't win a big game the way that he's not been able to in the regular season, they're not going to beat Notre Dame, even if they are possibly at home, which I don't know. They could pull it off at home, right? Because they looked like they decently could have against Ohio State. But with all recent things, I'm going to take Notre Dame here. And I'll just go kind of from the bottom to the top. I would take Georgia over Notre Dame. Miami and Texas, I think, would be an absolute banger as well. I could see Miami escaping just because of how that offense is. But I think, again, just who Texas has played, I think Texas had looked more sound. Miami's had to play hero ball for the last, month. Now, they do have Cam Ward. So I really am. Oh, your mic sounding kind of rough. It might be, I hate to say it might be doing that thing from when we were on the game, and it's just like kind of loud and scratchy. It just started happening because I heard it in my AirPod. Try again. You might be okay. Talk, you might be okay.
All right, we good?
Yeah. You're
okay. Good. My bad, bro.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I just heard it. No, you're fine. We're almost out of the segment anyways. I could see Miami escaping, man. I really could. So let's just kind of keep that one up for grabs for a moment. I would take Oregon over Tennessee, and I would take Ohio State over BYU. So then we would have Ohio State and Oregon. Even if Georgia and Miami played, I think it would be an extremely close one. If Georgia and Texas played, I think it would also be a close one as well. We know it's hard to beat the second team twice. So whether Georgia played Miami or Texas, I wouldn't lie. I'd be nervous against both of them because of how Carson Beck has been. But I would take Georgia. I would take Oregon. They would meet up in the national championship, and Oregon's just a better football team, bro. I'll say.
Yeah,
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They are. They're the better football team. So I could see Oregon winning this one, coming away with it. It would really be a pick 'em, though. I mean, Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, Obviously, you would take, Dylan Gabriel over Carson Beck, but the talent on both of these, football programs is absolutely elite, stellar, cream of the crop. So I do believe we're headed to a Georgia and Oregon. As of today, with the 12-team playoff bracket that we saw last night, I do believe we are headed towards a Georgia and Oregon college football national championship for the first one ever in the 12-team playoff, man. Any kind of closing remarks here as we had a loaded show, talked some awesome games, got to chop up the first ever 12-team playoff bracket?
Now that I got a chance to think about it, I think if anybody in the first round was going to make a statement and, possibly upset the apple cart, it'd be Indy.
For sure. He said the apple cart.
Yeah. I mean,
I feel you, though. All eyes on Indy and Boise State in the first round.
Yeah, really. I mean, let's see what they are when they play somebody big. Like, because Indy's got to play Ohio State. They got to play Michigan, I'm pretty sure, as well. So let's say they coast through those two games pretty well and beat them. You know, what do we think then? Where are they ranked? These are questions we have to ask. Do they take the 4th spot from BYU? I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't.
Right.
So, but yeah, Indy is definitely a team to watch out for. Outside of that, I think the rest of it shakes out the way it should, the way we predicted it just now, if the season ended today.
Right. I think Indy, Boise State, and Miami would be the big 3 teams that you keep your eye on because they've been rolling, but where's competition been? You know what I mean? Indiana's got one coming up against Ohio State. Obviously Boise State's going to be able to shake out their rest of the year, and then Miami, I feel like is gonna. Yeah. You talking about Indiana, Ohio State?
Yeah.
Is that this weekend? Hate to ask that.
I don't know. We can find out real quick though. One sec.
November 23rd. So we got 2 weeks from Saturday. So week after Georgia and Tennessee face off, we'll have Indiana and Ohio State as well.
2 bangers.
Yeah, at 2 we got Alabama, LSU this weekend, dude.
Yeah, that'll be a pretty good one too.
This college football season, man, before we get out of here, it's been such a blessing. It has been great. I've been glued to college over to NFL, and anybody who knows me personally in life, I have always dragged college football. And some of the things that I've not liked about it have still definitely, reared its ugly head in this one. But it's been such a great season, dude. I'm loving the 12-team playoff. I love the predictions, the bracket that we've already got up front. So it's just going to be amazing as things shake out, man. But as always, brother, I appreciate you jumping into the AA so we can chop up college football every single week. I'm going to go ahead and let you run off here, get into the second half of the show. You already know we'll see you next time, man.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here. Oh, and congrats to your Saints for firing Dennis Allen.
I know! Free at last! Free at last! Just like I'm Saints, and I'm loving it, man. It's serving the fans well, and more than anything, it makes me super happy to put out the content. But I love you, brother. I'll see you on the next show, and take care of yourself. Okay.
All right, man. Yes, sir.
See you. Appreciate everybody jumping into episode 80 of the NFL with AJL. Again, you could have been anywhere else on a Wednesday evening, but you're right here tapped in with me on the show. As always, before we continue through, let's hit the sponsor break. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell as well so you never miss a post. You can get notified of all of our YouTube content. The QR code there in the corner of the screen is every bit of social media and podcast content as well. If you can't find me, I promise you're simply not looking hard enough. And as always, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. If you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, this is the real estate team that you need to be connected with. You can get on their exclusive newsletter, their monthly neighborhood market reports, even take a chance to go into one of their in-person real estate meetups. They're having their next one tomorrow, November 7th from 7 to 9 p.m. in Peachtree City, Georgia. If you're familiar with the area, frightening and thankful aspects of real estate investing. If you guys have the time to get there, I would highly recommend it. And we're sponsored by PlayStation Online at PlayStation Online for all your gaming and worship needs. The best gaming and worship collaboration that's out there on the market. Use code AJL at checkout when you go to buy merch, whether you want a hoodie, whether you want a sticker, whatever it may be. Like I've said multiple times in the past, these guys can put what's it called? These guys can put the logo on any absolute thing possible. Darby, you are tapping in at the perfect moment, man, because we are literally about to get into the NFL segment of the show. And we are going heavy with Saints football. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last as the Saints finally fire Dennis Allen after losing their 7th straight game in the NFL, the worst streak since 1999. And let's just start with off the top. This was a move that was needed. That is not breaking news to anybody. I'm actually shocked that the Saints went out and did this. I was carrying along on my Monday morning, fully accepting my fate of the fact that Dennis Allen was still going to be here. And Mickey Loomis was going to find a way to insufferably smack his gum up at the podium and bring out his Bill Belichick and his Chuck Noll and every other coach's record that compared to Dennis Allen when he wasn't. So when the Saints actually did this, I was shocked. Gayle Benson actually does care about this team. When you lose to the worst team in the NFL, you become the worst team in the NFL when you're on the longest losing streak in the league, or just about. You're currently holding the 3rd overall pick. So clearly I'm elated about that. I'm ecstatic. The Saints have not moved on from a coach in well over 20 years. The last coach to actually leave, I think it was Jim Mora. He resigned in the middle of the year. And then before that, the Saints just aren't a team that lets go of coaches in the middle of the year. So the Saints are acknowledging that it's time to move on. The Saints are acknowledging that they can no longer stay in the Sean Payton and Drew Brees era of kicking the can down the road. But that's not the only step. But I kind of want to break down the game a little bit, even though it's not super worth it. Throw you some of the stats. We'll talk about Mickey Loomis. We'll talk about the interim head coach and really kind of everything that's going on with the Saints right now. But let's just call it what it is, right? It could not have gotten any worse. There was no longer room to look beyond the results when you just lost to the worst team in the league and Bryce Young. And again, Dennis Allen was continuing to find new ways to lose football games. The Saints ran 24 more plays than the Panthers. They outgained Carolina by almost 200 yards. They had more first downs, less punts, no turnovers. They won time of possession by almost 10 minutes, and they lost. Oh, wait, you had 10 penalties for over 100 yards. Here's an even better one. Teams were 275-0 when outgaining opponents by 150-plus yards, running for 150-plus yards, and winning the turnover battle. But thanks to good old Derek Carr and Dennis Allen, thankfully he is a former employee of the New Orleans Saints, that record is now 275-1, thanks to your beloved New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr also being paired with the most perennial loser ever in NFL history. Dennis Allen had the worst head coaching winning percentage of any NFL head coach in the last 3 decades that coached at least 70 games, 33% winning percentage, and he could never beat a winning team, and he can never situationally coach. But not only that, there's a new record in town for the Saints. Derek Carr becomes the first quarterback to lose to 31 NFL teams, and he has the chance to become the first to lose to all 32 teams at home playing for the Saints against his former Raiders 4 days after Christmas in New Orleans on December 29th, 2024. Dennis Allen has now been fired midseason twice, with Derek Carr at his quarterback both times, so I hope that speaks volumes to Mickey Loomis and Gayle Benson. Again, Dennis Allen, I'll proudly say it. He was the worst head coach in NFL history over the last 30 years that had coached at least 70 games. So looking beyond the results was no longer an option. It was no longer an option. I mean, the end of the first half, the Saints can't even manage a 1-minute drill to get points with timeouts in their back pocket. Even the announcers were confused. You have Jay Feely on the broadcast, a former NFL kicker, saying nothing the Saints did right there made sense. Why would they do that? Why would they not take a timeout? Because it's the Saints. Because it was Dennis Allen. Because it was the group of athletes that he was continuously putting out on that field. And it was inexcusable. It was undeniable. And you could no longer look beyond the results. It was now back-to-back games of ineptitude with clock management. Top it all off, you need 4 yards to keep the game alive, and you throw a low percentage go ball, just basically praying for a pass interference at that point. Game was over. We'll forever remember it as the play that Dennis Allen was let go. That was the play that got Dennis Allen fired. God bless Alvin Kamara, man. Leading rusher and receiver for the team. 35 touches, over 200 yards. I mean, no complaints about Alvin Kamara. Every Saints fan for the rest of Alvin Kamara's tenure with this franchise should literally get on their knees and bow and thank him for re-signing with the New Orleans Saints, because we could have shipped him out and got picks. In a messed up way, I wish we would have, because the rebuild now hopefully is finally beginning. It was time to scrape it. And we started. Real quick, I want to give a shout out, a prayer, good vibes for Chris Olave, because he might need to consider retiring. We do get the news today that Chris Olave actually has decided to take some extended time away from the team in football, not away from the team, but he's not in a rush. There's no decision on his media or long-term future, but with him suffering 4 confirmed concussions in the NFL and 1 in college, he has now had 5 concussions since the year 2020, dating back to when he was an Ohio State Buckeye. He's been knocked out cold 3 times with his concussions between college football and the NFL. We've even seen him clear the concussion protocol stupidly. Shout out Ochsner Health. I don't really know if that's the case. I'm just a salty Saints fan. We've seen him clear the protocol a couple times before and play the next game after suffering a concussion. You got Josh Olave on Twitter, Chris's brother, just saying it isn't worth it with the New Orleans Saints. And honestly, at this point, with where the team's at, when you're the worst team in the league, when you're one of the worst organizations in the league, yeah, you might not exactly be the Panthers front office or the Giants front office or I don't know, the Patriots front office, but you're bad. You're the worst team in the NFL. You're on a 7-game losing streak. You haven't lost this bad since Katrina, and before that, you hadn't lost this bad since the turn of the century. And we know that the culture is cooked with the New Orleans Saints. Let's not even try to disguise it. I mean, you got Michael Thomas going off on Twitter on Derek Carr after the hospital ball that he threw to Chris Olave. You had Kalen Saunders saying, hell, throw me in at quarterback. Let's get something, worth watching, something worth, laughing at, or whatever the hell he said. I don't even want to commit that tweet to memory, because the culture is just eroding with the New Orleans Saints. When you have a guy in Kalen Saunders saying to put him in at quarterback so it would be worth watching, it's cooked. And you didn't see any of the coaches going after any of these players when it happened. You didn't hear anything in the media. And that might be something more that you keep in-house for the New Orleans Saints. Cam Jordan tweeting, we just lost to the Panthers. He really had higher hopes. He wanted more for the fans. He was genuinely sorry. Kalen Saunders saying at this point, I just want to go 500. I mean, the culture it was absolutely cooked for the New Orleans Saints. And there's no question about it, which is exactly why it was time to get look at Nick Underhill. He just dropped an exclusive interview with Mickey Loomis. I'll definitely be watching that, possibly. Maybe try and pick it apart, but not sure, because at this point, we know Mickey Loomis needs to go. And that's the next point that I'm getting into, because he's the one that's been restructuring these contracts. He's the one that's historically whiffed on all the drafts outside of 2017. And he had a lucky moment with, Brian Bresee. And obviously we brought in Pete Warner, and, Alontae Taylor was a solid pick as well, but he really has not drafted very well since that 2017 year. We saw him kicking the can down the road with the contracts, writing bad contracts with veteran players. So we just know exactly what it is and how we really can't trust anything he says. It's almost worth not even digging into what he says because of how inept he is. How inept he actually is at the podium. Honestly, I'm trying to find. Okay, here we go. Mickey Loomis on firing Dennis Allen on WWL radio. I think Dennis Allen is a fantastic football coach. He was a great defensive coordinator. And I think anybody in our league who would talk about him thinks he's a fantastic football coach. He is, I think, in this case, look, the circumstances created the record. Yeah. Don't say you can look beyond the results either, Mickey. Do not say that, because your guy that you employed as a perennial loser with an elite losing quarterback were the circumstances. Yes, we understand injuries, but don't sit here and act like Dennis Allen over the last 2.5 years with the Saints has not had his own boneheaded decisions, to where if this team wasn't 2-7, hell, if they were 4-6, 5-5, DA keeps his job, but DA situational coaching couldn't get us to that point. So yeah, the circumstances created this. That's just the truth. And a lot of people don't want to hear it. No, we do want to hear you admit it, Mickey. We do want you to admit that this team is not on the track that it should be, and that Dennis Allen was not the right coach. And the owner went around your silly self, interviewed the players, sat down with the players to what was figuring out. Multiple people told them that Dennis Allen was the problem, so they let him go. Silly things like players not parking in their parking spots, blah, blah, blah. We've got 100 more employees than we had 10 years ago, whatever. This is impressive that he knows this. Going into this last game, we were the 8th fewest penalties in the league. That's more of a comment on discipline than where a player parks, for crying out loud. This is the part that gets me, y'all. But it's just right back to what stares at you right in the face is what we've had an abnormal amount of injuries, including to our quarterback, and we haven't been able to overcome that. And so here's the part that gets me, guys. And so that puts pressure and stress on the organization, and ultimately it was cause for a change. I understand you're trying to let your boy down easy, Mickey, because he's going to hear the reports. By the way, John notes that Dennis Allen texted the team to inform them of his firing. That's just Dennis Allen in a nutshell. Look, I get it. He was a great defensive coordinator. He was behind that Saints defense, the best Saints defense we've seen in years. It really in the history of, arguably of the team. The NFL record for, most straight games without a 100-yard rusher. All that came under Dennis Allen. So I'm not going to sit here and act like he didn't serve a purpose to the city. He was just a very, 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 very bad head coach. And it's about time that maybe if not Mick wants to recognize it, then Miss Benson did. But for him to say that the injuries put pressure on the organization, so it was time for a change, that exact statement is exactly why Mickey Loomis still needs to go. Because you think injuries were the only reason why you had to fire your coach, not his 26-53 record, not his 18-25, 35, 45, whatever record he had with the New Orleans Saints, not his 33% winning percentage, not his horrible situational coaching leaving points on the board. It was the injuries. Okay. I'm not going to continue to sit here and complain every week about Mickey Loomis, even though that is what I do, and Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis and complaining about them on the show. But look, one pin has fallen, just great. But I'm glad Mickey made those statements because it just confirms that he's still the bad apple in the building as well. I mean, it just is what it is. He's the bad apple in the building. And if you think injuries put the stress and the pressure on the organization, and that's why change had to be made. No. Your players were saying the locker room had been lost. Your players had almost quit on this Dennis Allen defense. Let's just call it what it is. So it wasn't the injuries, Mick. It was the fact that your buddy was horrible. Your buddy was horrible. From what I've heard, none of these upcoming quarterbacks are super great. We'll roll with Rattler the rest of the season. Then in the draft, get a young running back, wide receiver, and tight end and give Rattler a season without Team U players. Then in 2026, it's annihilate for Arch. Well, I think the quarterbacks coming into this one are decent, man. You got Quinn Ewers. You got Cam Ward. You got Shedeur Sanders. Those are really the only three that, super stick out to me off the top. But I don't, all the other ones I'm not really a fan of. I don't know if they'll, be NFL draft eligible. But yes, the Saints finally fired Dennis Allen after losing the 7 straight game, the worst streak since 1999. We know as Saints fans it couldn't get any worse. I was shocked. I'm glad because this owner does care about this team. She was treading. She still might be the worst owner in the NFL just with how she's let things go on. I hate to talk about the owner of my team like that, but it was time to put a stop to the bleeding. It was time for this to stop. And it did. And one domino has fallen. And now let's get into Darren Rizzi, who is the special teams coordinator and the assistant head coach as of 2022, has been named the interim coach of the New Orleans Saints. And after letting the emotions temper, after saying, man, maybe it should have been Coob. First of all, no. He's been very disappointing. First year as an OC, after being a passing game coordinator to being an interim head coach with 2 wins and a bad offense? Yeah, don't want to ruin Coob like that. I'm already worried about him possibly not even being here next year. I thought Darren Rizzi being named interim head coach was great. Darren Rizzi has been, coaching for 32 years, 16 years in the NFL, 16 years in college football. He's coached with the likes of Sean Payton, Brian Daboll, Bill Belichick, some of the Harbaughs, if I remember correctly, whether it was assistant head coach, whether it was special teams coordinator. And I just think it's an overall solid move. A lot of people don't think about is special teams coordinators actually have a relationship with everybody on the team, because a lot of people that come in when they're fighting for a roster spot, they go and play on special teams. And a lot of the younger players end up getting their licks from being on special teams. That's literally how Taysom Hill came to be what he is. Sean Payton just loved what he was seeing on him from the Packers on special teams, pulled him, obviously created, do some crazy stuff for him, and the rest was history. But Darren Rizzi, he already said he was already trying to get in touch with everybody. He's got a relationship with everybody on both sides of the ball because special teams does require both sides of the football. So yes, it does feel weird for a special teams coach, but really the assistant head coach we moved to interim. But I thought it was a solid move from the Saints. I didn't want Joe Woods. I didn't really want Koob to do it. You don't really want to pull anybody out of a situation that they're really not super familiar with. And honestly, the Saints did this because they know Darren Rizzi has the chance to, they know Darren Rizzi really has that ability to hype guys up. When you listen to him in the press conference, he's got that deep, burly coaching voice. His last name is Rizzi. He's from New Jersey. He hasn't been handed anything. He's been coaching for over 32 years. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's extremely passionate. I was sold within the first 5 minutes of his presser. He sounded sensible. Like he can make sense of what he was saying. He sounded committed. He didn't start off with, look, listen, none of that Dennis Allen shit. Okay. It felt convicting. I really enjoyed his opening presser. I like how he didn't shy away from any of the bad things that have been going. Quote, we've been doing things around here for the same way for a long, 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 long time. He's already came in and changed up the locker room. He's came in and changed up the practice schedule. He's changed up practice. He said that everything is getting reviewed. Everything. Every unit of the ball. He's already brought in some extra help for special teams. But his main focus, he's still going to have a hand in special teams, but his main focus is now being a leader of men for this football club as they are at the bottom of the barrel of the franchise. That's what his job is. Thought his opening presser was great. I thought his demeanor was great. Very passionate guy. He didn't seem like he was about any bullshit. He didn't shy away from the tough questions. The most he could say was it was a tough day. I'm doing my best to get in touch with everybody. I'm passionate. I'm going to go hard for this team. Darren Rizzi possibly wants to be the head coach of this Saints team. He really does. And if there were to be one person in the building that maybe I would consider, barring what he does in this interim, it would be Darren Rizzi, for probably the sole reason of he's only been here since 2022. So it was the tail end of the Sean Payton days. So there's, it's not like he's super, since 2019. So it's not like he's super ingrained into that Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis era. Even though, yes, he still is a part. We'll get a little bit into it on Friday about head coaching candidates for the Saints and what I want to actually see out of them in their next head coaching search, which Mickey Loomis isn't focused on, and I don't blame them because you can't really focus on that until the season's over. But I thought the Saints did a good job naming this guy interim coach. Again, passionate, nothing handed to him, relationship with everyone on the team. This is going to be a guy to ignite our players. This is going to be a guy to actually stand on the sidelines and just have some fight in him. He agrees that the way that the play calling was going in the last couple of games was just absolutely atrocious. He said he's going to let Kubiak continue to run the offense. He's going to let Joe Woods continue to run the defense. He's not coming in and trying to really micromanage anybody, but more be a leader of this team. Stop Cam Jordan from walking away in the tunnel. Get us off a 7-game losing streak. Make these guys want to play with the fleur-de-lis on their helmet again. But it is a little bit of a double-edged sword because, I want to see my team rebound, okay? I don't want to watch my team go 2-15, 5-12, 6-11, whatever the hell it is. So it's a double-edged sword. Well, let me take it back. I always want what is best for my team. We're at the bottom right now, so all we can do is go up. So that means we're looking at the future. So do the Saints rebound somewhat and play harder to win just to stick them with another, 12 to 18th draft pick or whatever? If they manage to get to, 7-10, maybe 6-9. I mean, I think the Saints can only win maybe 3 more games this year. So hell, maybe we're still rocking with a top 5, top 6 pick at 5-12. Or, and I've never said this, I'll admit, guys, it's new territory for me being this slow after being a contender. Yes, I remember the Aints years and the bags on your heads and Katrina and all that stuff. I was born in 97, so anything before that with the Saints, I don't really recall unless it's highlights or articles on the internet. But being this slow, it's very new to me because now I'm very cognizant of the game. I wasn't, super covering the game like I was obviously back when I was 9 and 10 years old when the Saints won the Super Bowl and, in the late 90s, early 2000s before Drew Brees and Peyton came in. So this is new territory for me. And I say all that to say I'm not used to saying my team should tank. But I've said it before, and I'll possibly say it again. Do we need to keep losing to get a higher draft pick in the future? That just doesn't feel right as I say it. I'm not going to root for that, but I do want a higher draft pick in the future. If we go out and play our asses off for the rest of the year and are just managing to scrape up 4 to 5 wins, Great. I'd love to beat Atlanta fresh off of a head coach firing, stopping them in their tracks just to piss them off a little bit within the division since they're undefeated and possibly see what we can do, keep them from sweeping us. But I don't want to get into this 12 to 20th overall pick in the first round. Yeah, you can still find some talent. I don't know about the quarterback class for next year, but I do like some of the quarterbacks that are coming forward this year. And, here's also the other thing. I don't trust Mickey Loomis with this rebuild. I do not want Mickey Loomis anywhere near this rebuild as a New Orleans Saints fan because he's going to have a process in the draft. He's going to have a process in evaluating players. He's going to have a process in the contracts. I don't trust Mickey Loomis with a top 5 pick. I don't trust his front office with a top 5 pick. I think, shout out Ross Jackson for Locked On Saints podcast on YouTube. I think if you get a top pick this year, you hold up a big ass for sale sign in the first round and you collect a slew of picks, move down, move on in the rounds, and just stockpile the picks because it's official. The rebuild is starting. The Saints are slowly getting the poison out, shelling out these bad contracts, and you have to get younger and less expensive. The most valuable thing in the NFL is a young and inexpensive roster and a rookie quarterback contract until it's time to pay them. So it is a double-edged sword. I want to see my Saints rebound, play with some grit, look like they haven't quit on this team because, Darby, I told you this before I got on the show, and it's so true. The Saints, it's been a hell of a year for the Saints. You come out 2-0, you look like world beaters. You get hurt in game 3 against the Eagles, and you lose. You have injuries to your quarterback. You have injuries to the entire team. You go on a 7-game losing streak. You lose to the Carolina Panthers. In the midst of that, you lose to Sean Payton, who came back home on Drew Brees' Hall of Fame night in the emptiest stadium I've ever seen as the Saints get schmacked 33-3, and they go on a series of blowout losses. Then you re-sign Kamara in the midst of all this, aging running back. Still respect him. So grateful that he stayed with the Saints. And now your coach is fired, and you've traded a premier position in Marshon Lattimore. And now you have an interim head coach and your special teams coordinator. So, and your assistant head coach. It's been a hell of a year for the Saints. It's been an absolutely crazy year. So, yeah, it would be nice to see them have some fight. But I still want to look forward to the future because that's all we have at the moment. And I'd love to get a higher draft pick, trade it down, because I don't want a quarterback behind this O-line. The quarterback's going to have to come in with a new offensive, a new head coach, of course. But I just don't want Mickey Loomis any part of the new Saints regime. I want him as far away as possible, truly. The Saints trade Marshon Lattimore. So painstaking for me to see when the Saints posted thank you to him. When Marshon posted thank you to us, saying, I wish we could have got one. Seeing Marshon Lattimore in Commanders practice today already, mentoring a young corner, I think it was Emmanuel Forbes. It just doesn't feel right. But the Saints have accepted that they are not, that they are not a contender at the moment. That's why the head coach has been fired. That's why you just shipped out arguably your best defensive player next to Demario Davis. The Saints trade Marshon Lattimore and a 5th-round pick to the Washington Commanders for a 2025 3rd, 4th, and 6th pick. Those are all later-round picks, obviously, because Washington is doing so well, so they will probably fall down in the picks. Hopefully, this rebuild has officially begun. Again, Mickey Loomis still needs to go. There's no question about that. I think the real rebuild will come when Mickey Loomis is gone, as much as that sucks to say. But the Saints haven't done this in a while. Trading a star midseason. We've picked up Eli Apple at the trade deadline. We picked up Quan Alexander at the trade deadline. We've picked up other players in free agency in the offseason, but the Saints have not been in the business of giving away their star players in the middle of the season. Yes, we let Caden Ellis go. Yes, we let Trey Hendrickson go, Marcus Williams, CJ Gardner-Johnson. That was for cap reasons, though, after the year. Cutting them, teams were signing them to money, and that really sucked to see. Trey Hendrickson, Marcus Williams, all those guys go out. But the Saints are acknowledging now that they're not a contender. You fire your head coach midseason, which you haven't done, and now you trade away a 28-year-old corner, Marshon Lattimore, who has been amazing for the New Orleans Saints. Arguably the greatest cornerback in Saints history. No question about it. They're accepting where they're at. So this is a good step in the right direction. You fire the head coach. You get rid of Marshon Lattimore. Not get rid of him. You trade Marshon Lattimore. And you're just getting picks. You're acknowledging it. I want to talk about Dennis Allen's comments on dealing Marshon Lattimore. When they restructured his contract in January, Mickey Loomis's comments, not Dennis Allen. When Marshon Lattimore was restructured in January, Mickey Loomis was asked, by the media, can you explain that? And he was like, it's just for cap reasons. He's like, it's for cap management. They were like, so there's no specific reason. He's like, yeah, there is a specific reason, but I'm not going to tell you that. He was like, it's for cap management. So we're like, okay, whatever, Mick, say what you want to say. And then his comments in April about anyone being tradable for the right price. But he just recently said that he wasn't in the business of, trading away half the roster and shipping out his stars. But this is what it is. And Mickey Loomis was very coy about this. He was not very honest about it when he was being asked. I want to go and find Underhill's tweet from DA about trading Marshon Lattimore. Let's see. Marshon has been a great, fantastic player for us. It was a great draft pick, defensive rookie of the year, blah, blah, blah. Drafted him in 2017. He's a great player. He still is one of the better corners in our league, and Washington is getting a good player for their playoff push here in their run. So I wish him nothing but the best. It was just, ultimately it came down to a trade deal that I thought was, good for us, good value for us. And that's why we did it. So let's talk about the value that we got for Marshon Lattimore. Did we get enough in return? I'm about 50-50. When you look at it, you send out, I don't think you were going to get a first for Marshon. The Saints were asking for a second. It's hard to ask a first, I think, for a guy who's been injury prone for the last couple of years. Hasn't played a full season since, I think, 2018, if I'm not mistaken. One of the better corners in the league, but he has missed, good stretches of time over the years. Marshon's been good the last couple of years. I don't think he's been great. He was great the first few years with the Saints. And I'm not knocking him again. I love what Marshon brought to the table. I love seeing number 23 in the black and gold and pestering Mike Evans and pissing off some of the best receivers in the league. So you take Marshon in a fifth to get back a 3, 4, and 6. So basically you could say you got Marshon for a third and you traded a 5 for a 4 and a 6. So if anything, it kind of feels like a wash. Of course, I wish we could have got more. I wish we could have got, a 2, a 3, and a 4. Possibly we might have had to give up a 3 and a 4. And with the way Washington's doing, they are, bumping down in, what's it called? They're going to bump us down into the bottom round. So we're really getting a low 3, high 4, a low 4, high 5, and a low 6, I guess, high 7, however you want to look at it. So that sucks, right? But you got 3 picks for him. You could say 2, but again, you restructured him in January to make it tradable, and now you move him at the deadline. And we knew Marshon was going. It hurt. It sucked to see. But the Saints have to get younger, and they have to get less expensive. And again, with these 2 moves, you fire Dennis Allen Monday, you trade Marshon Lattimore Tuesday. I'd love to see breaking news on Wednesday that Derek Carr's benched for the rest of the year, or Thursday. Did we get enough in return? So, barely, but it's bigger than the picks are. First of all, you got picks, thankfully. Second of all, I know I've said it a lot, but I'm shocked by the firing of Dennis Allen. You have finally acknowledged it. Everybody around you knew but you guys, and you finally acknowledged it. So that's the bigger message, the bigger reason of optimism for me is the fact that you did go out and accept that you're not a contender anymore. You do what bad teams do when they're trying to rebuild. You trade away your star players, let them go possibly get a ring, and you let go of your bad coach. So the acknowledgement of the hopeful rebuild starting, again, Mickey Loomis is still next, I think is the bigger takeaway here. You got to look more forward to the future and what this means down the line outside of the picks than just the compensation for itself. Last topic here on the show before we get out, the Browns trade Zadarius Smith and a 2026 7th rounder to the Lions for a 2025 5th and 6th round pick. And this is great for the Lions, right? They've been looking for pass rush depth after both of their edge rushers and ideally Aiden Hutchinson as well went down. I think they clearly won this trade here. Z Smith has 26 quarterback pressures this year, which would put him at number 2 on the Lions behind Aiden Hutchinson, who has 30. Obviously, Hutch is hurt, though. Hate to see that. The Lions, they're 7-1. best in the NFC, arguably, class of the NFL, arguably. They have a 30.6 pass rush win rate in their 3 games since Aiden Hutchinson's injury, which is 26th in the NFL during that stretch. That is 6th worst in the league, so damn near bottom 5 and getting to the passer. And we know if you want to be a successful team, if you want to have a nice playoff push, if you want to continue to stay at the tops of the league, you have to be able to rush the passer. And Zadarius Smith, probably a familiar name to Lions fans. He spent the 2019 through 21 seasons with the Green Bay Packers, and he also played in 2022 in Minnesota. He actually hit double-digit sacks in all 3 seasons where he played, missing all but one game of the 2021 campaign with a back injury. Zadarius Smith has that dog in him. He's pretty gritty, and maybe even a little petty. He clearly, openly chastised the Packers on how they handled his injury. We remember that a couple years ago, going so far as to sign with the Minnesota Vikings specifically to play Green Bay twice a year. So that's a really good peek at the mindset of what Z Smith actually brings to Detroit. Seems like it lines right up with that smash mouth culture that Dan Campbell has created, and with Dan Campbell himself. Zadarius Smith, he's 32 years old, 5 sacks in 9 games this season. His second season with the Browns, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler, 65 career sacks over parts of 10 seasons with the Browns, Vikings, Packers, Ravens, and now he is with the Lions. And again, I'm happy for Detroit. They needed this with them being arguably the best team in the NFL. They just added a premier position. And, after Detroit got, upset in the NFC Championship, for lack of better words, last year, I was kind of curious as if they could get back because of the way Dan Campbell's coaching throughout the year really showed its ugly head in that final moment. And Dan Campbell is a great coach. I'm not saying that he's ugly. He turned around arguably the worst team in NFL history when you go back to the beginning days of the Detroit Lions, and definitely one of the worst teams over the last 30 years when we know about the playoff wins and what they didn't have leading into last season. But we did see those aggressive play calls be the reason why they possibly fell short against the 49ers in the NFC title game. So clearly the Lions won this. Not really talking about the rest of the NFL trade deadline because it really was a snooze fest. I don't really care for Mike Williams or Deontay Johnson or, Preston Smith. Yeah, they were solid moves, but I thought the real only needle movers in the trade deadline, obviously we had DeAndre Hopkins. Of course, we had Devontae Adams, as much as you want to take away from that. But at the actual deadline, Marshon Lattimore, kind of in the afternoonish, we had Zadarius Smith to the Lions early on in the day. And again, the Lions needed this. When you look for pass rush depth, when you're 6th worst in the NFL in pass rush, you definitely have to go out and get a guy. And they did. They definitely did. I think it's going to look good. They had, Zadarius Smith standing up. The Browns did him standing up on the opposite side of Myles Garrett. So, he can put his hand in the dirt. He can stand up and rush the passer. So he's definitely a versatile guy. He's a hard worker. He's got a nice motor as well. Again, he's gritty. We know that he went and played for the Vikings out of spite of how the Packers handled them. So I think that the Lions made a very, very solid move here at the NFL trade deadline. That was episode 80 of the NFL with AJL. That was a packed show, one of the longest shows we've done in a while here. I know we had election day yesterday, and then I actually wanted to be able to not only keep up with the election, but watch the selection show from college football as well. Of course, before we get out of here, y'all please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell so you never miss a post, please, and thank you. Y'all please make sure to get at us in the YouTube subscription so we can get up to 1,000 subs. If you want to drop a super like, super chat, super thanks on YouTube to donate directly to the show, you can. Or if you want to DM us on social media to also donate to the cause as well, we would greatly appreciate you guys. As always, that QR code in the corner of the screen is every bit of social media and podcast content at the NFL with AJL. If you can't find us, you're simply not looking hard enough. It was a packed episode 80. I appreciate y'all sticking with us through the Saints talk, the trades, and the college football season. Hopefully we'll be back on Friday with episode 81. I'd love to go over some of those head coaching candidates that the New Orleans Saints should have. As always, I love y'all. I need y'all, and I will see you guys in the